Welcome to the Earth Your Wow podcast, brought to you by ReuserBox, providing a better way to buy cardboard boxes. We're your hosts, Jack and Ellie.
This is the podcast where we talk to industry experts and changemakers to try to answer the question, how do we make our businesses better for people and the planet? Today we're chatting to Alex Grace, CEO of Banana Moon Clothing. Banana Moon Clothing is a B Corp certified personalised clothing company that is on a mission to make the clothing industry more sustainable. Thanks for joining us today, Alex.
Thank you, guys. Lovely to be here. Yes, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I wanted to start with if maybe you could take us back to the early days of Banana Moon Clothing. So how did it all begin?
Yeah, it's a really interesting, unique story of Banana Moon. We're a family business and it was started by three people. So my mum, my dad, and a lady called Nikki, who is still with us today. And it started from my house. So it was almost in response to, in the early 90s, it was quite, I understand, quite a challenging period, sort of economically, not too dissimilar to now, I guess, but challenging in terms of working with banks and financially. So my dad previously had another business that was slightly larger and decided to sort of change all that and do something where he was completely in control, low overheads, flexible, the ability to be whatever it wanted to be. And so he set up Banana Moon, named after one of his favorite music albums. So he has a massive range of vinyl, and he was going through from sort of A to Z, picking them out and going, what should we call the company? And he got to B, and he got this vinyl out that was called Banana Moon with a picture of a moon with a smiley face on. So that's where the name came from. So music, it's a prog rock band that it's from, and that's the story really of just creating something from home where there was that flexibility to sort of for me to be around, to take me to school and not be out at work all day, to be able to not have to pay the banks or to have massive overdrafts and things like that. So very, very lifestyle-y. So I think that's where the sort of essence of Banana Moon still runs through today. And maybe we'll come on to it later on, but I believe we're highly professional and we're extremely ambitious, but really, really prioritize the standards that we have across the customer service and the product, but that really agile, small family lifestyle, fun bit still runs through us today, which we really try to keep hold of.
Yeah.
The bit I think is interesting is you kind of, it sounds like, well, how old were you when the company was set up? Or
so I'll have been 7 years old.
Yeah, so
at that point.
It's almost like you've grown up with the company, and then obviously at some point I guess you must have entered it, and then now you're running it. So it's a really interesting kind of story. Like how did that shape you, do you think, or did it? I don't know.
It did, Jack, it did. Being in that clothing industry from such a young age is you're just surrounded by it, and it's in your blood effectively. And so many times, especially with it being at home, you get roped in as a bit of child labor, unpaid, just to help out. And it might be packing some boxes or folding some garments. And I used to go on delivery drops because back then there was a lot less e-commerce and there was a lot less sort of national delivery and couriers and things. So quite a lot of it would be local business, going around on local deliveries with my dad and sort of seeing the customers and meeting the customers. And so it's part of you growing up, and you get to see all the garments and how they change over time as well. The type of items and the clothing that customers were buying, say back in the mid-90s, versus the type of range and the fabrics and the products that are available now. It's really interesting to see that change over time.
So I wanted to ask you a bit about the garment industry. So the fashion and garment industry is one of the largest contributors to environmental, I guess you'd call it the climate crisis, especially through fast fashion. why do you think fast fashion has been allowed to dominate for so long, despite the obvious environmental and ethical costs to it?
For me, there are two key factors. The first, I think, is obviously price and price driven. Um, I think part of that as well, we've got to be really honest in talking about the pressures on families, on people's situation to, to be able to buy new clothes. Sometimes they do have to reach for whatever is the most affordable thing. And I think that cycle just continues. How do we break that when the economically it doesn't really get any easier? The wealth divide gets larger. And so, in many ways, how can we blame people for looking to buy the cheapest thing? Because we know quite often the cheapest thing would be the thing that's worse for the environment or being created in a worse way than something that's more sustainable. I think the second part for me is so I did a talk at a sustainability show a year or so ago in Manchester around fabrics, and I wouldn't call myself a fabric expert as such, but we know what we're selling and we know, the different fabric compositions and what that means and how that makes them durable or not and how they wash and wear and how they can be printed. And I went through some very basic principles of that. And there were quite a few people that came to watch this talk. And many people just didn't know this information, didn't understand what it means. They didn't understand what the difference between, say, an organic cotton and a standard cotton was, or the recycled fabrics. And I think that is something that we're missing, that education point. And I'm sure when you get into sort of specialist textile degrees and things, of course, I'm sure that's all in there. But from a general education perspective, people don't really know what they're wearing, in my opinion. And so therefore, how do you make a different decision on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what I'm wearing, to be honest.
I
I
don't.
mean,
And also, like
And it's
the most you can often go off is sometimes like a label or have some kind of reference to like
yeah,
eco-friendly or
yeah,
recycled,
but
but it's something
then,
very abstract, like recycled, eco-friendly. It's like, what
yeah,
does
but
that
can you
mean?
even trust that? Because then we've
Yeah,
got like the greenwashing issue, and we know that
yeah.
consumers are getting a bit savvy about that now, and they're thinking, oh, does it even mean anything if it says it's organic or eco-friendly or sustainable? What does that even mean? So how how do consumers know what to go for?
I think this is exactly the thing, Ellie, and there's nothing wrong. I mean, that is absolutely normal, I think, in the way that you guys have quite honestly said you don't know. And it's very, very normal. And we find that. So when we would speak to clients, so we would speak to quite often, well, a lot of B corporations, a lot of really sustainability focused companies, really great ethics, and they're looking to us for advice, which is absolutely right. That's where we should come in and help people to make informed choices. But quite often the remit is, oh, the question is prompted by us. We ask the question, what's your view on sustainable items? Do you want to make this a predominantly sustainable range? And quite often the answer is yes, which is great. And that often could be followed by, yes, our company directive is that we buy sustainable items. And it kind of almost doesn't matter what that is. It doesn't matter how sustainable that is. There's no sort of level to it, as long as effectively it ticks a box. And I'm sounding very cynical. I'm not meaning to be, about our client base. I think it's what I'm trying to highlight is that lack of knowledge or that lack of understanding about what people want, which is completely normal. But if we could get that across to people in a better way, so that they knew, and the people that are leading businesses are making these informed choices. So, for example, we would sell some employee engagement merch to companies, or even some workwear, and the people at the top of that industry, quite rightly, are not specialists in our industry, but they're saying to their colleagues who are going to buy this stuff from us, just make it sustainable. At least that ethos is there, but as I say, that clarity over what that means just isn't. And thankfully, we can guide people with that. So we can say, well, look at this or look at this. We believe that this is better than this. but there are a lot of companies, particularly in our industry, which is slightly removed from the fast fashion industry, who won't be equipped with that, who won't really care. And so therefore, yeah, that's fine, just have that. Yeah, it's fine, it's pretty sustainable, just don't worry about it kind of thing. And that I feel like that a lot of that happens, particularly in our industry.
Well, we bought some workwear
Yeah.
not too long ago, and then we asked the supplier, who's great, like,
Yeah,
what's the most, can you quote us for like the lowest impact t-shirts and jumpers and stuff?
yeah.
And he was like, yeah, well, this is supposed to be, according to the supplier, this is supposed to be like the most eco-friendly one. And I was like,
I think we actually were paying for it, weren't we? So we were paying a premium for a
yeah,
supposedly
Yeah,
more sustainable product, and then
yeah.
you, I think, asked the question.
well, I just said, he was saying, yeah, this is supposed to be the most eco-friendly one. I was like, when you say eco-friendly, what do you mean? And he was like, well, don't know really. It was like, it says it on the label. And I was like, have you got any data from the supplier? And he was like, well, no one ever asked for that. So yeah, and I didn't really get anywhere with it. I mean, we bought it anyway, but I was kind of thinking ideally in like the future, would be cool if there was like a QR code you could scan, like a standardized system, and you could scan it. It would say like, what's the breakdown? Like, is there like a traffic light scoring system or something? But
Yeah.
I don't think there's any plans for that at the moment. So
I think you see that quite nicely where you've got a contained fashion brand that
yeah,
particular, Patagonia is the one that springs to mind, but there are lots of really other good ones that are really clear on their impact, displayed in a really nice way on those product pages. And that's extremely powerful. And that becomes a lot easier when your whole supply chain is within your gift, isn't it? But yes, you're quite right. I think having that information together, Jack, would be on sort of QR codes with going back to that original question, would really help people, certainly those who are more inquisitive, to get a little bit more informed about what they're actually buying. Why is it eco-friendly? What does that mean? How eco-friendly is this product and why? I think that would be a really big step forward for us to be able to do in terms of clothing composition and how it's made.
I suppose if, I guess this is like a legislation thing, but if something like that was enforced, I suppose it would also probably elevate the truly more sustainable like brands and companies, because people couldn't hide behind vague phrases like eco-friendly. It would actually be the people that want the lower impact stuff could actually find it, and those brands would get more business. Do you find that, because I think you mentioned it earlier, that more clients tend to be looking for more lower impact products from you guys? Is that the intent you find, or?
Yeah, and I think, again, two parts to that. The first is that they've seen us, they've done their research, they like the look of us, and they come to us for a particular reason. And so again, the easy way is, or a B Corp, so we would naturally get other B Corps wanting to come and inquire with us and shop with us. Um, and then I think there's the other side to it, which is, and again, I don't want to come across as cynical because it might not be the case, but it's companies and organizations that feel that they should be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And we could argue all day long about whether there's a true merit that's behind that and a true reasoning behind why we should really be buying low impact products. But nevertheless, the point comes up. The directive is there for the person who is doing the organizing of the purchase to follow that path, which is at least a big step forward from that. So yeah, I think that's something that we're feeling a lot more over the years. And as I say, I think that's particularly because of how we are as a brand, and I think we attract those types of customers as well. But, I think the key bit for me is very, very simply ask the question. So if we're talking to a client, we need to understand what they're looking for and why they're looking to make this purchase. But a key question as part of it before we go off and do any work is, how do you feel about sustainability? in your products, in what you're about to buy, in your workwear, whatever it is for an event, how do you feel about sustainability? And then from that gauge, at least you can get an honest answer. Some people are really honest. To be honest, I don't care, and I need it the cheapest it can possibly be. And that might be for really valid reasons. Charities and the like can sometimes be in that position. That's absolutely fine. But more and more, the answer to us is yes, it's really important to us as a business. And I think that is a massive step forward, at least.
And presumably, like the lower impact items are a bit more expensive. Do you find, or is it not much of a difference?
I think it depends, Jack, really. I think on the whole, you could say that yes, they're a little bit more expensive. But I think what's nice, particularly now speaking from our industry, is that we're starting to realize that we need to have some sort of core basics in there as well that make more sustainable fabrics affordable. And so we're starting to see that come through more and more. So we do have a truly viable alternative. So our industry is typically really bad for, for example, it might be a big global brand. Let's say they're doing a big product launch or a huge event, and they'll just go and buy 40,000 t-shirts printed. And it will generally be on price. It will be sell them cheap, pick the cheapest one generally. And you don't have an alternative to that type of, we don't do runs like that typically. It's not really our position, but that happens a lot in the industry, and it just keeps on being the same thing. It's how cheap can we get this? The prices get even cheaper, and we're always going to choose this particular t-shirt that doesn't cost very much. And I think we're now starting to get that transition across to products that are equally priced, viable alternatives that are organic cotton or that are recycled cotton, recycled polyester, which is great. And that's just purely because there's an appetite there, and the suppliers and the brands and the factories are expanding their ranges out. So there's a bit of commercialism in there as well, but at least it gives us those opportunities to have cheaper options to sell to people who can't afford it.
So I think it's good when like lower impact products are more expensive, because I kind of feel like a really big problem in our society and our culture is, this like race to the bottom on price. All these businesses trying to be the cheapest, and that has like negative social impacts, like questionable labor in Southeast Asia.
When it comes to something like clothing, you kind of pricing people out, aren't you? Accessibility is a problem. That's why you've got the fast fashion brands.
True.
I think this is it. I think,
isn't there?
I think
I know that's not
when,
really where you fit in, but it's.
I think that's it, Ellie. I think to your point, Jack. Maybe from a personal purchasing decision, and I'm exactly the same. So it would be, I would always choose to, if I can, buy a Patagonia product or a pair of jeans that are organic cotton, and I would much prefer to do that. But then when you're talking about organizations and the pressures that are on organizations and serving them, it's really hard to just stand by that. This low impact product costs more, because the problem with that is the client unfortunately has to go, well, we'd love to do it, but we can't. And we can't really control that, barring trying our very best to sort of extol the virtues of it. And so we could either, lose that order to someone who's providing something that isn't a sustainable fabric or a B Corp produced, or they just go, do you know what? Thanks very much for this offer. It looks great, maybe next year, but right now the budgets are this. We're under a lot of pressure. It has to be this to cater for our event or to cater for this particular need that we have right now. And I think that's something that we've tried to do, where it's really difficult because it means that we are potentially just giving margin away, but we're trying to incentivize people to transition across. So where we think there's a real appetite for it, but we understand that the affordability is not there, we would incentivize people with a particular discount on it. So that might be short term, it might be transition across for year one, and we'll do this discount for you. But obviously charities and things like that, we're really, really keen to support where we can. Say, look, guys, if we can, go for this item because it's loads better in so many ways, and we'll help you to do that. And so that's a conscious part of our ISO 14001. So one of our environmental metrics objectives that we've created is that sort of incentivizing with the education of why that product is better. And by the way, we'll support you to try it and to get into it. And hopefully you like it and continue buying that product. And from my perspective, that's not because we make any more profit out of it. That's because it's the right thing to do. All of our pricing is straight across the line. It's just we just do an algorithm. It's a percentage on top of that cost price. So it doesn't matter to us in theory from a profitability perspective, but where it does matter is from an ethical perspective, and that's why it's important to us.
Can you tell us about how Banana Moon Clothing is different then? I think you've like touched on a few things, but like the processes that you use and the things that you offer that are better than these fast fashion brands that we've talked about.
Yeah, sure. So we've transitioned all of our processes across to as sustainable consumables as we possibly can. So, for example, with printing was typically using plastisol inks. Plastisol, you can tell by the name, it's got plastic in there, it's oil-based. So transitioning across to, there's a whole new raft of water-based inks and water-based ink technology that's out now. It's a little bit more challenging and it's a little bit more technical to print with. So that is a barrier to moving across to it. It's not just an easy, straightforward decision. So we've transitioned all of our printing across to water-based inks. That includes the investment in a machine, a digital machine called direct to garment, which is really cool technology. So you guys or maybe some of the listeners and maybe have seen screen printing before, printed through a mesh screen using inks onto a garment, and even art, you can create art with it and posters and things. Direct to garment is effectively like having an office printer where you print onto a piece of paper, but for garments. So it's a big piece of kit, water-based inks, barely any water use, versus say screen printing. CMYK plus red and green inks, and basically big print head just goes across the garment side to side and prints the full design. So we've invested heavily in that type of technology, and we bought we felt that was the best machine in the industry for that. So from a printer perspective, that's that. I think embroidery as well. It's been around a long time. What's brilliant about embroidery is it's very, very durable and it lasts forever. So there's less need with embroidery to replace garments over time because it's just there. So that's great in the first instance. But they use polyester threads traditionally. The threads are now being fully transitioned across to recycled polyester from salvaged water bottles from ocean plastic. So that is a big step forward in the embroidery itself as well. So there's some sort of key areas that we've introduced, making our the decoration that we call it, onto the garments much more sustainable. But other things that we've implemented are different machinery that we've invested in around the building. Really interesting stuff in the way that we sort of reclaim our screens. So the screens are reusable for our print method. So instead of blasting them with a pressure washer, putting them through an automated screen washer, which is effectively like a dishwasher, but for screens. The great thing about that is it uses the same water and chemicals in there for 6 months. Previously, the method of blasting a screen with a Karcher pressure washer all day, I mean, all that water going to drain, the water usage was phenomenal just on one screen. So little things like that, where we've really invested to try and reduce our water usage considerably. And then one thing that we wanted to commit to was extra filtration. Obviously, we are a manufacturer. We are using chemicals. We are using inks. We know that is part of our footprint. So making sure that we've got water filtration systems around the building to ensure that whatever water that we're sending to drain is essentially pure drinking water, not leaving anything to chance. And we've always followed all guidelines on water historically and what we can send to drain, of course, but still wanting to make sure that there's absolutely nothing can get through there. So installing those has been quite important for us. And again, we don't have to do that. We don't have to invest that money. And quite honestly, in the last few years, probably would have been better not to invest that money in that type of technology and that machinery, but it's something we felt was really important to us.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you touched on that your ISO 14001, obviously like your B Corp accredited. I just wondered like how obviously you made these really conscious decisions to make your operation as low impact as possible, which is great to hear. But how big a part of that was the accreditations? You know, was it did that help you do that, or was that like a byproduct of trying to be lower impact? Or
I think the accreditations came after that, really, Jack. I think we've always had the drive and the desire to fundamentally change the business and how it operates. And I think, you talked about quite a lot of the time on, your podcast might be startups and things like that, which is great. And they can start off in this fully sustainable um, ethos, and everything is built up from that, which is amazing. We didn't have that because, quite frankly, it wasn't really the thing it is today. Let's be honest, over 30 years ago, it just wasn't. So taking a business that is in manufacturing and chemicals and using inks and energy and wanting to change that, wanting to transform that, understanding everything that's going on in the fashion world and seeing what an impact that has on the environment was key for us. It's been a big part of us for the last sort of 10, 15 years to piece by piece sort of change the direction of the company, if you like. And I think a byproduct of that is just an interest in the likes of the ISO 14001. For those who aren't aware, listening to this, 14001 is the environmental management globally recognized standard that we're certified in, and just having everything in place just meant it was so easy for us to be able to get it because we're doing all of this stuff already. The key bit is about the mapping out those processes, documenting everything, making sure that everything is really tightened down. So, for example, it's simple stuff such as you can't just order a rogue chemical or ink into the business and just start testing and using it because we won't have the safety data sheets on it. Safety data sheets on it. We won't have the how to use it safely. We won't have the training in place. We won't understand its environmental impact. So all those bits just weaves that into your business then. So you've got much more control over where things can go rogue, if you like. And I really enjoy that about the ISO standards. It's the same with the 9001. Again, a lot of businesses will be aware of that from a quality management perspective. But it's that mapping out your process. You're just saying what you do as a process, but it's making sure that someone doesn't just come into your business, maybe a new staff member or something like that, and just decide to do it a totally different way. And the issue with that is that you could create an issue with the customer. Your service level suffers, and ultimately the customer suffers. And that's the great thing about the ISO standards that protect against that. So it's almost like these are all really nice things that we wanted to put in. And then those standards just back up the fact that we maintain these. We're highly professional in the way that we operate, and we don't let anything go off track when we've got it in place, if that makes sense.
I guess it's nice to have that like stamp of approval that recognizes that you've been doing that. I wonder if it helps you gain clients as well, possibly because they can see that you've got those accreditations, maybe even like employees, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think with ISO, I think particularly with larger businesses, they recognize that. I think it's a key part for things like tenders. It's important to have because they want to trust who they're buying from. They're not going to let them down. And particularly from an environmental perspective, the last thing they want is any type of bad reputation or something to go horribly wrong with the product that they bought in good faith. But we talk about B Corp as well. An instantly recognizable symbol to suggest that these two companies who are B Corps have values that align. Without having to have really long discussions and conversations. And tell me a little bit about your business and how you operate. You don't really need to do that as such, because that mark just tells people. And I think you're exactly right, Ellie, that is a factor for us. The commercial hat on, those standards, those accreditations, those badges, they do really help to grab clients' attention very quickly. But I think the key bit for me is that we don't have to waste time discussing who we are and how we operate and what our ethos is. You can see that these explain to you. If you know those accreditations, you can see that straight away. We can get straight into the discussion of, right, how can we help you? What do you need from us? And can we help? Can we share some advice, some inspiration, some designs, some creative to make this experience of buying our product, in our terms, it's custom clothing, personalized clothing, the best possible experience it can be for you. So when you get it, you're absolutely delighted that your brand has been represented in the best possible way.
Yeah, going back to what you said about like the water usage, it would be amazing to like compare your new kind of the technologies that you're using compared to other companies, or perhaps what you were using before. Do you have any stats on like the amount of reduced water usage that you have now with your garments, or is that?
Yeah, so with our production, just from the we basically had two big automatic screen printing machines, the traditional method. We swapped one out and we brought a direct to garment machine in, which was the new technology, the inkjet technology that I mentioned, that uses very little water. And straight away, we cut our water usage as a business by 25%. And that continues to rise because of the introduction of the likes of the screen cleaning unit I talked about, the big dishwasher, effectively. That continues to reduce for us. So it's been a massive saving for us to be able to. So investing in those technologies, investing in those new sustainable technologies, has an overnight impact.
Of course, it will of course save you money as well. So
Yes. Yeah.
Which is great too.
Yeah, it's a win-win in so many respects. And I think the ability for us to reduce our footprint, that's where we're all going, isn't it? That's where we have to go. We have to have a clear plan of how we're going to reduce our footprint. We can't just carry on going, okay, this is fine. This just will always be as it is. We have to have a journey to how we're going to reduce it. So for us, it's continuing to look at that new technology that enables us to do that and being savvy with it. So, for example, Ellie, as well, things like through B Corp, they talk about it with the BREEAM standards of the buildings, the sustainable buildings. We're pretty good. It's a pretty new building that we've got two buildings that we bought. But there's a lot more that we can do to those with some investment. And achieving that standard in the same way as the ISO and the B Corp is just a nice cherry on top to go, you did all this work, and from a globally recognized standard, they're now saying that this is excellent, or this is outstanding. And that's always, as a company, what we're trying to achieve, and get that almost stamp of approval on it, if you like.
And I guess like one of the big things with clothing is where it ends up at the end. Yeah. So yes. I saw on your website you do like a circular recycling scheme. Is that right?
Yes. Two quite cool elements to this. So workwear and just custom clothing is a nightmare, because if you think about it personally, you can go to a charity shop, you can even sell it on the likes of, say, Vinted, and things like that. But with branded stuff, you have to be really careful, because actually, for a lot of companies, that is quite sensitive. There's a security issue with it, potentially, depending on which company you are. So, for example, just donating all of your old workwear to, another country or a charity or whatever, for other people to be able to wear that clothing, in theory sounds great, but then you've got your logo all over it, and there are issues that come with that. So our goal with the recycle scheme is to try and challenge that problem And our solution was, number one, to offer a really simple, easy method, which was we take back old workwear from our clients, and we have a local partnership with a company in Ripon who have been to the plant. It's really interesting how they cut it all down, and they cut all of that workwear down so it's unrecognizable. You can't see the branding, and it goes as dog bed filler.
All right.
So it makes dog beds, to which we buy those dog beds and donate those to local dog trusts, dog charities, and things. So that's a really cool way, simple way of making sure that your clothing has a use, but your branding's not out in the public. The second way, the sort of even more circular way, if you like, is something, because we have our own internal design team and production team, so we manage everything, is to be able to get the stuff back and to working with the client, to create a generic design that would go over your existing designs, effectively keeping the usability of that clothing, as long as it's obviously wearable. So patching that up, fixing that up, covering over the branding with something generic, and then donating that to local homeless charities. So at least we can get the benefit of that clothing still, and it's not an end of use workwear item. And I think that's the key issue with workwear, I find in particular. A lot of it traditionally has gone into landfill. It's just gone in the bin when it's either damaged, completely soiled, or someone moves company. Just goes in the bin.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's obviously like a lot of innovation there and a lot of like forward thinking about how do we reinvent our processes and make things better or lower impact. I kind of wondered if there's anyone listening that's maybe, in a similar position to you, but maybe a few steps behind you, maybe you 10 years ago, 15 years ago or something. Have you got any advice to someone like that about how to get to where you've got in terms of like, coming up with these circular principles or getting this more modern, lower impact technology in your business? What advice would you give?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jack. I think, inherently, it's like for us, there's a lot of innovation and creativity within the business, so that's where my brain works, for example. So I love that sort of stuff, new ideas, the circular recycle schemes and things. So having that in your business is obviously very helpful because you're able to think about problems and create solutions for them. So that's firstly helpful. So if you either have that or maybe you don't, two things that I think might be useful. First and foremost would be utilizing. There's so much help out there from government bodies, local councils. There's so many free sustainability workshops these days. So much free advice in terms of Zoom calls, seminars, day sessions that you can attend with great people to share knowledge. And then off the back of that, there's so much funding available to help you with the capital expenditure on the new machinery or the new thing that you want to invest in. There is help out there for SMEs in particular to be able to implement this stuff because it's important to the government, it's important to the country that this happens. So utilize that, get in touch with local contacts. The second one, and one thing that we implemented, was a sustainability committee. But instead of it being the management team, we kept out of it and basically created a cross-departmental, very diverse committee of all different ages where they got together once a month and the scene was set. We talked about why it was important. We talked about some of the great companies and businesses that are out there to use as a marker, if you like, a benchmark, and then gave them the opportunity to create a list of tasks and a list of changes that they wanted to make, but gave them the autonomy and the budget to be able to implement those, to a level. So, for example, any big spec for solar panels, for example, you can't just go and commission a load of solar panels to be put on the roof. It needs to be a carefully thought out business decision. But to an extent, just implementing simple things that might cost a few £100 they had the autonomy to go and do that and work together as a team. And I think by removing the management element from it as well, you remove a little bit of that fear, a bit of that control, a little bit of a look into the management to go, what do you think? Do you think it's a good idea? Should we do this? You tell me what to do. And giving them the autonomy was really powerful for us. So I think something like that, I always think cross-departmental teams work really well for all sorts of different business issues, but particularly for sustainability, I found that was impactful for us.
Sounds like you've got a very open culture. I hate that thing you get, especially with bigger corporate companies, when it's like, oh, I can't help with that. You know, you have to speak to a different department or a different manager. But I just wondered, that kind of open kind of culture that you've got, do you think that came from like the kind of, you know, lifestyle, family oriented sort of domestic business that you set up, you know, originally, or your dad or your, you know, your parents?
That's a great point, Jack, because that is absolutely true. We're just a bit different in that sense. And I'm not trying to say that we're completely unique to other companies. There's fantastic businesses out there, but we are different. You know, it's a family business starting from home. You know, all the story that I shared at the start, and we just keep that slightly alternative essence running through the core of us. That family bit first, but with a care for everyone and care for the people that work for us, the care for the people that we work with, our suppliers, our customers, wanting to just do the best we can every single day to be able to have a business that we're proud of so that we can sleep at night knowing we did our absolute best. And, you know, as a family, we're like that. That's like, you know, I like to think that's how we are. And that goes through the business for us. So it's all about the culture. It's all about bringing people in to our team, showing them kindness, showing them support, wanting them to be the very best that they can be, and engaging them in these new opportunities. So you don't have to just sit there and do this job. But also, we've got a sustainability committee. Is it something that you're interested in? Oh, yeah, well, why don't you come along and why don't you be part of it? And it's creating these different experiences for people, whether or not they're with Banana Moon for the next year or 5 years and they move on, but it's enhancing their career and it's enhancing their life. And that's something me in particular as a leader is really strong on. It's like, how can we benefit people's lives, not just their careers? So I think that is coming from that slightly more lifestyle alternative view on business.
Yeah, I mean we're siblings, but we always kind of like cringe a bit at the whole like family business thing. So I think, you know, there are like, I don't know, just sometimes it gets
well,
a bit.
You hate
yeah,
it.
yeah. There was a joke you were going to change your name at one point, but to be fair, like what I notice is I think when you get like small family businesses, or if you work with like siblings or family, I do feel like there's a thing often where people just care more. And I think that's the thing that's kind of like missing a lot of like bigger corporate businesses, is getting people to care a bit more. And I suppose like with the environmental stuff as well, it's like getting people to care a bit more, isn't it? If you want to build like a business where people actually align on like lower impact.
I guess having like a shared purpose, perhaps around sustainability, for example, that I don't really have all the answers, but do you think that helps to bring your team together over something? Because it's not really, it's not like they're just coming in to print t-shirts, is it? There's something bigger that they're working towards.
Yeah, and that's a really important thing that we get across to our team and how we build the foundations of our culture. So just maybe if you're working on a machine and you're producing an item, it's not just an item that just goes off into the ether and it's like, forget about it. If we think about what we're doing, we're creating sort of mementos, we're creating reasons for people to belong to something. It's that visual, it's almost that visual marker that you belong to an organization, you belong to something that you're passionate about, you belong to a team of people that are all working for this one common goal, and we create that visual marker, which is actually really powerful. So every item that we produce has a significant meaning to the person that wears it. And you know, some people could challenge that and say, well, not, it sounds a bit much, you're fluffing it up a bit. And genuinely, it's not. This is a custom item for this person. where it actually means a lot. And if you think about a lot of our clients, so it might be you guys buying some of your merch in the past, your company, you've started this, you've got this business, you've got this brand, and then you see it represented on a clothing that you can proudly wear. That's quite a special thing. It's not just a piece of clothing with a print on. And it's, we do stuff, we do lots of stuff for schools and colleges and unis, purpose-led businesses, and that all has a meaning, and it's trying to get that across to the team. Because one thing as well that's really interesting from a sustainability perspective is our garments aren't supposed to be thrown away. They're actually meant to be kept because quite often they have a particular use or a reason. So if you think in the purest sense, like a school leaver hoodie, we do quite a lot of that. It's quite a big part of our market, actually, working with schools. Always has been. And all the people's names are represented within a number of the year. So you're telling me that someone's going to throw that away? They're going to keep it as long as they possibly can, aren't they? Because they might not wear it, but they keep it. And so the items that we're producing also from a sustainability perspective, they're not meant for landfill, they're meant for memories, they're meant for mementos. And so getting that across to the team is something that's really important, of understanding the value of not just churning stuff out here, we're actually producing stuff that matters to people that wear it. And I think from that sustainability point as well, Ellie, as we've sort of really brought that into the business, I think there's a significant pride from the team that we've had feedback on. We do our employee engagement surveys. We have a lot of sort of checks and balances on a sort of quarterly basis, a weekly basis, on how people are feeling. And pride always comes out as our number one feeling from our team of working for Banana Moon. It's the one that pretty much every single member of the team would say that they feel about working for Banana Moon, which for a little family business that's an SME is pretty powerful to say that we've created that pride. It's not like we're some global brand or anything like that, but the team feel proud about who we are, product that we produce, but also the impact that we're trying to have on the world and the sustainability. So I think that all contributes to culture, doesn't it? When people feel that, it matters much more, in many senses, it matters much more than other things that are important to employees. If you feel proud of where you work and you feel part of something, that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Definitely. And I do still have my school leavers hoodie as well. So
exactly, you see.
As you were talking, I was like, I think I threw mine away.
Oh no, Jack!
What's the reuse in that?
Yeah. Should have kept it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know what's been your toughest sustainability related setback so far?
I feel like picking out one specific example is really difficult because it hasn't really been setbacks as such. It's always been forward progress and making progress. And I think that's the point. The ability to make the progress at the speed that we want to make it is the challenge, where quite often in the last few years, we have to really think about survival. We have to really think about protecting the job. So being a B Corp is not just about environmental and sustainability. It's about protecting our team members. It's about protecting the legacy of our business. And so we also have to prioritize that. And especially over the last few years, it has been really, really tough. And so I've made conscious decisions not to invest in things that I was absolutely dead set on, like my heart was set on doing it. And it was the sustainability investments, because it potentially jeopardized the well-being of the businesses in the next sort of 6 to 12 months if it didn't go too well. And that is something that is really frustrating to me because we are completely self-funded. We own everything that we have. And that's our model. And again, back to that lifestyle point, Jack, that business from 1993, it's exactly that. Same ethos, principles run straight through even now in 2025. So yeah, that's the frustrating thing for me because there's so much more that we could be doing. So we try to do what we can when we can. and keep making progress. And I think even over the last 5 years, where it has been really, really tough, and I'm sure you guys have found the same, we still move forward so much. And to take the chance to reflect on that is really, something I'm really proud of. But also, we could have been a hell of a lot further ahead. And I think that's the biggest challenge.
Mm. I heard like a nice way of looking at it, because we have similar experiences, in the last couple of years, where it's like we want to do this, but it's like, actually, maybe we should think more about like pay rises and stuff first, because it's like, you have to make sure you have a strong company, before you start spreading out your impact, into like the community, for example. But heard this really nice way of thinking about it, where it's like, like when you're building a company, like draw a circle around your company and try and, protect and invest in everyone in that circle first. And then once you get to that level, draw a slightly bigger circle, so like maybe you draw it around like your local community or like your industry, and then keep going, which I thought was quite good, because sometimes you can get really excited about doing all these great impact things, but you also, you have to run a business, you have to make it successful if you want longevity. But it's quite a challenge.
You're not having any impact if you don't exist anymore, are you?
No, exactly. It's true. I think actually, like, I love B Corp. We're a B Corp, but sometimes, like, I myself get a bit carried away, because obviously they want you to do so much, don't they? You have to keep making impact. So you're like, yeah, let's go and do this. Let's volunteer, and you have to. At the end of the day, we're a for-profit business. We have to make profit, otherwise there is no business. So it is really difficult to balance that, isn't it?
And
really
I like that kind of B Corp principle of like sort of people, planet, profit, like trying to balance that out. I kind of feel like it seems better than the charity model a lot of the time. So yeah, but I think that's a really big challenge, probably for anyone listening as well. So it's very interesting.
You just have to be realistic about it, Jack, don't we? We have to be true to. We talk about being, really purpose-led business and trying to make impact, but to be honest, in some years it's just not possible to make the impact that you would have liked, and that's really important to acknowledge too. But as long as the idea is there, and as long as the drive and the passion is there, like you said, there's so much that you would love to do, the B Corp principles and all the different ideas and things that other companies do, you go, that's amazing. As long as you have the drive and the passion to get round to that, hopefully at some point, then it's still in there, even if you can't implement it right now.
How do you ensure Banana Moon stands above greenwashing and builds real credibility? I think we touched on this a little bit. It's obviously a big thing in the garment fashion industry.
Yeah, and I think a little bit back to one of the points made earlier, I think it's about being open and honest. So making impactful choices, making changes that truly benefit the community, the environment, but being really open and honest that try not to be something that you're not, because it's impossible to implement everything that you want to implement, and there's no point trying to fluff it up or say that you have X, Y, and Z in place when in fact that's just not true. The most important thing is that you acknowledge that this is a long-term continuous improvement project, and so say the honest truth of where you're at right now, but also be really clear about where you want to be. And I think for me, that's the thing that I would always say, because when I'm talking about sustainability at Banana Moon, no one can argue with me because I'm saying everything that's actually true and in place. So it's real, it's there. I would like there to be a lot more. So I think that's the message to other companies, would be where it's not part of the overall drive of the business, but you're just saying things or spinning it in a certain way to make it sound better than it is. It's just not really worth it. You're as well just saying that you don't do it and that actually you would love to do it in the future and this is the plan. And I think there's, you do spot a lot of that in sort of content and PR and things like that. You do spot a lot of times where things are being made to be more sustainable than they are. or a particular product or service has more sustainability credentials than it really does, because it all just sounds a bit like waffle. So I think I'm really, really conscious of that. And the last thing, I like to think we're really honest and authentic. So I don't want to ever come across where someone says, "Oh, that just sounds like a load of rubbish that it's not true what you've put in." And I think I'll be horrified at that. So I'll sometimes talk to our marketing team about that as well, because we've got a lot that we can talk about, a lot of great sustainability initiatives. But I also say to the team, I don't want to just lead on that stuff all the time. I don't want to come across as holier than thou, telling people how they should be and what they should do, and that we're the best, most sustainable business in the world. Yes, it's here, but also there's all these other elements to a business too that we should talk about. So I don't want it to be always sort of sustainability, sustainability, sustainability. It's about finding the right balance, I think.
I think the interesting thing there is it's like kind of being more honest about like the good and the bad stuff that you do when it comes to impact.
Yeah.
I think is it's disarming. I think for people that care about that, but also I feel like it's more authentic, like you said, because like you said, when people are trying to just insert like circular economy into their product when it's not really circular economy, like you can kind of tell, and everyone's like, and people like it's a bit cringe somehow. Whereas I think if you're like disarmingly honest and you're like, well, look, not all of our business is as good as we would like. We want to be here. We do lots of good stuff, but we're here, and this is where we want to go. I was thinking when you were talking about Tony's Chocolonely, when obviously they're all about like no slavery in their supply chain, right? And obviously they found some, didn't they? And they didn't like cover it up. They were like completely honest, and they said, "Oh, we found this. This is a problem, but we're And I think that's really good advice for anyone listening. It's like just be completely honest about the good and the bad and where you want it to be.
Yeah. I think that's the true essence of B Corp as well, isn't it? Where, okay, they've made a mistake, something that they've overlooked, but then they've acknowledged that. And I would like to think that will never happen again at that business. Tony's Chocolonely won't let that happen again, because they are principled enough that they'll put the right policies and processes in place that just doesn't happen. And that's the bit, isn't it? It's where the people at the top of the business care enough and are involved enough to make sure that that's just not acceptable.
Yeah. I think with Tony's, they say actively that there is so much slavery, or there was anyway, that they actively look for it in their supply chain. So apparently it does crop up, and they will find it, and then they will try to deal with it. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but they got a lot of criticism over that. It was a couple of years ago now, it was a while ago, but they were saying that this is a good thing because we're finding it and we're doing something about it. Whereas obviously a lot of the other chocolate brands would just not really care.
They'd say like
some of them are getting better apparently, but
or they'd say like we're applying anti-slavery practices, but I think the fact that they would actually publicize it highlights the problem almost and their cause, because it's like we're doing all of this and there's still these problems,
and gets people talking about the problems.
Exactly.
100%.
Interesting. So penultimate question from me. So you're kind of your life's, I guess, been merged with the life and the growth of Banana Moon. Since you were sort of 7 years old. How old are you now, roughly?
38.
38. Okay, so 31 years. That's how good my maths is. You've been part of this kind of journey, and I just wondered, in that kind of 31 years, or as even just the amount of time that you've been working in the company, what's kind of like one thing now that you wish you'd known, maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
Generally, Jack, or from a sustainability perspective?
Both. I think both.
Okay, two things.
I think there's so many people that will be a few steps behind you, so it's just really valuable info.
Yeah. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but I think one of the key things would be establishing why you exist. And it's very popular these days. We talk about Simon Sinek and, find your why and things like that. But it is really, really powerful. We established that. We spoke about how much our products matter to those people who wear them. It's not just an item of clothing that's worn once thrown in the bin. Actually, ours really, really matter. And I think that finding your purpose and finding your why as a business, and it's not make a profit. That's not the why. The why is something far greater than that. And that creates everything else that runs from that, I think. So you can build a value set from that. You can build your mission out of that. You can build your culture based on that as well. How you induct team members, how you do the other side of it, where it's performance management and things like that. It runs through everything. So I think starting with that is really powerful. Um, I think I think the other thing for me running a business is to find your way of doing things and to find your approach. I think when I first started running Banana Moon, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And the problem with that is that you don't know who's telling you the right information and you don't know how to act on it because you don't know what's right from wrong. And so one of the things, and I think this is inherent in me, but one of the things that I did was go, well, this isn't good enough. And I know some of this is experience. I was quite young, but I wanted to develop that myself. So I looked for external sources of support. So that might be peer-to-peer groups. That might be taking some coaching. That's reading around. So, listening to audiobooks, listening to podcasts, and finding what works for you, finding what makes you you, and implementing those things builds up this credit almost with your team if you do it right and if you've got the right ethos and the right mindset and you do things with respect and you do things properly. Implementing those things over time builds up that respect. So when you do make a decision, you know it's the right decision because you're well informed. The team value the decision and respect the decision, and the respect is grown from that. And you can show kindness, but you can also deal with issues when they need to be dealt with clinically, clearly, but in a really good way so that we move on forward from it rather than have a big fallout on it. So I think for me, it was establishing what type of leader am I in creating that confidence and finding those sources to give me that confidence as the years pass by to the point where I like to think or feel like I feel like I'm competent at my job. So I think that's what I always wanted, to feel competent at my job, whereas at the start I wasn't. So I think I think that's something that's really important, to find who you are and what type of leader you are, and look to external sources for that.
Mm. And that also like defines the culture, I think, across the whole company.
Yeah,
Exactly what you said. So,
yeah.
and like culture is output. It's everything. Um,
It's built the team members coming into the business, feeling engaged, feeling motivated, with the right attitude, wanting to learn, wanting to develop. And that means that you can be better, we can provide a better service, a better product, but it also means we can instigate these really, really powerful, sustainable innovations and sustainable um, projects at pace because the team are the right people in place, they've got the right attitude, and they want to see the business develop. And I think that's been the key thing for me, because I know I've got a team of people that love doing this stuff, they love doing their jobs, but they also love improving the sustainability of the business. So anything new project, anything new innovations, new machinery, they're absolutely bought into it. And that's great because it means it's not just me pushing it then.
So final question.
Sorry.
It's 2035. What does the garment industry look like? And what's Banana Moon's role in that story?
So I think the garment industry will continue its overhaul across to majority sustainable fabrics. I still don't think it's there. I think it's ever increasing, but it's not it's not the majority yet. And I think by that time it will be. I think a lot of our fabrics will be organic, recycled, and actually I can't even imagine the type of innovations that will be in the industry at that point. Um, I'm sure people far cleverer than I am right now are coming up with this stuff. So that's going to be front and center. I think the technology, from our perspective as a branding specialist, will continue to evolve. And the key for Banana Moon and what we promised to do is to be at the forefront of that. So where there's new machinery coming out, we will allocate the funds to be able to do that when we can, to make sure that we have those branding techniques in place. And this consistent, continual involvement in the industry. And I think with that, what you're getting with branded clothing, custom clothing, but even in fashion, you're getting pieces that are less bulk produced, more on demand type of production, fulfillment production, with more sustainable fabrics and more sustainable branding techniques across the board. So I think that's where it'll be. And my hope for Banana Moon, because I am effectively the custodian of this family business, is that we are still here, still thriving, and still a really forward-thinking, progressive, certified B Corporation at that point, with a magnificent culture. So being really part of the sort of UK custom clothing industry, real industry leaders in how sustainable it can be.
Clear,
Sounds
compelling
good.
vision. Maybe your children will be part of the business as well.
Maybe so, and that's it's another reason to make sure it's still around, and we've got a lot of people to look after, a lot of team members that we want to make sure that they've got careers and futures should they want it, and that's important that we keep that. But also, there's that option later on. So, yeah, who knows?
Yeah, cool. Well, that's a wrap. That was good. Good fun.
Yeah. Thank you
Great.
for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. We hope it was truly
Earth your while.
For more information, visit reuserbox.co.uk/earthyourwhile.
And if you'd like to appear on the next series of Earth Your While, please email media@reuserbox.co.uk.